Hello and welcome back to video number 2 from Designing a Life Worth Living, Mapping Your Heroine's Journey. I'm your guide, Dr. Minette Riordan, and I'm so excited about this video. And before I dive into part 2, which is all about mapping the next stage of your heroine's journey, I'll just recap quickly that whatever you're feeling right now is absolutely perfect. So the last video probably brought up some emotions, some feelings. It might have made you really curious about what the next stages are. And ideally, you have a little bit more clarity about where you are on your heroine's journey. And you may be thinking, oh no, it's really clear as mud. Well, by the end of today, you'll continue to get more clear about where you are and mapping the stages of the journey. Because remember, the challenge with the heroine's journey, there's no map. This quest that we're on to reconnect to the feminine is a quest that is unique to women. And there's no map. We have to create the map. This is part of the challenge. And while no two women's journeys look exactly the same, we definitely go through common stages, and we find that there's women who are aligned with us and aligned with our stage of the journey that we're experiencing, which is why community can be such an important and powerful part of designing a life worth living. And thinking about trying to do this alone on your own is not the path of the feminine. The path of the feminine is actually through community and through sisterhood and through finding people that can walk the path with you. So the first step to really mapping the next stage of your quest, once you have kind of identified what's happening, why are you having this longing and this yearning to reconnect to the lost parts of self, to reclaim some of the buried treasures that are at the core of who you are, the next step is to think about, is the life I am currently living in complete alignment with who I am and what I value most? And one of the most important building blocks for doing this is really identifying what your core values are. That might be authenticity, creativity, family, faith, spirituality, peace, and harmony. There are many, many, many words that can describe our core values. But in the words of Brene Brown, our top 2 core values in particular are the ones that we would die for. They are the ones that we are willing to plant a stake in the ground and make a stand for. They drive our decisions, they drive our relationships often, and they definitely become kind of the guidepost on this beautiful mapping for your next journey. And I want to share a quick story about core values with you and how they completely changed my personal life and have become an ongoing part of my own personal heroine's journey over the last decade. So I just realized as I'm recording this, it's April of 2019. I'm about to celebrate my 23rd wedding anniversary with my amazing husband. But there was a time about 10 or 12 years ago when things were a little sticky. It wasn't that easy. We were feeling pretty disconnected. Our kids were 10 and 7 at the time, and now they're 20 and 17, so it was 10 years ago. And Brad was busy working on his career. I was building a business as the publisher of a parenting magazine, and we realized that we needed some help to reconnect to each other and to design a life worth living together. This is not always a solo journey either. And we were so clear we were on the path together, but it felt like we were on parallel paths or that our paths were diverging and we needed to come back together. And I remember sitting in a life coach's office doing a core values exercise. And it wasn't the first time I had done this work, but it was the first time I had done it in partnership with my husband. And I remember him arguing to put fun on the list. And I've always been someone who took life pretty seriously. Like many people, had a lot of crazy experiences growing up. I have a lot of resilience skills, a lot of fierce independence, and fun at the moment wasn't high on my list. But he said, this is how I want our family to feel. This is how I want our lives to be. This is how I want us to make decisions. Is this going to be fun for all of us? And he convinced me that fun needed to be on that list. And it's right there beside authenticity, integrity, loving kindness, and respect, knowledge. Those are all things that are on the list, creativity. and fun is on that list. And now, anything that I do, anytime I reflect on, is it time to redesign my life? I ask that question, is it going to be fun? And not is it going to be fun for me, but is it going to be fun for everyone? And if it's not fun for everyone, then what's happening here? How can I bring this back into alignment? And I think what happens when we're mapping our heroine's journey is that we get out of alignment. We start listening to what others are telling us we should do, ought to do. Like me, maybe you get tunnel vision of this is the path forward. So as an academic from Stanford turned entrepreneur, I had a big transition in redesigning my life and my identity. And you're probably at this point where it's time to reflect on what are your core values, and are you living a life that's in complete alignment with your values? And this will give you the first clues on mapping what's next for designing a life worth living. Another clue is to start to remember and to reflect back on what were the things that you loved to do as a child, even on into your teen years, that you don't make time for anymore. Often the nuggets of deep joy and also our passion and our purpose lie in who were we being as children when we didn't have anyone else telling us what to do all the time. Maybe you were super creative. You wanted to be a dancer or a singer or a geologist. It doesn't matter what it was, but there's a sense that this part of you has been lost or buried because of life circumstances. And this is not about judging anybody or what was done to you or things that were good or bad. It's just a remembering, this is what brought me joy. So when you think about looking forward to what's possible for you, I want you to think about incorporating elements of what brought you joy as a child. And then the final stage for mapping the next stage of your heroine's journey is to really consider, if everything was working perfectly, what would it look like? So often we don't pause and really consider, what are we doing every single day? Are we living a life that brings us joy, that's aligned with our core values? Or have we been pulled off track for this reason or that reason? And again, none of this is about judging where you are at this moment. You are intended to be here and it's all perfect. And yet this yearning, this longing, this desire to create something different just shows you that something else is possible for you and that you're a little off kilter. And so I want you to think about, and you can see in the workbook I've written out there, to really think about, what are your core values? What did you love to do as a child? And finally, if it were all working perfectly, what would it look like? So those of you like me that are perfectionists and high achievers and you need to know all the details, I'm going to invite you to set that aside right now. And really don't worry about how it's going to happen, but lean into the creative, playful perspective, the dreaming side of what's possible. If everything was working perfectly, what would your life look like? I'll see you in video 3. I'm going to check my notes here real quick, where we're going to talk about meeting yourself on the adventure. And we're going to go a little more deeply into this idea of gathering the lost parts of ourself, because when we meet ourselves on the adventure, then it makes it so much easier to find the confidence and the skills that we already have that maybe we've forgotten about, and the courage to go forward from here where you are today on your heroine's journey. So I'll see you in part 3 of the video series.